Did you know that we have channel memberships now? If you'd like to help support this channel, get some exclusive Kawabana emotes to use in the comments, as well as an exclusive badge by your name, click that join button now to find out more. Every bit of support really helps. Thanks, guys. The Fujimoto incident, as it later came to be known, was a case of discrimination against a leprosy patient that has been extensively covered and studied in depth over the years. It involved bombings, murder, and potentially false confessions, and the subsequent court case has long been criticized for being unfair and unjust. But what exactly happened, and did an innocent man truly die because of discrimination? The Fujimoto incident can be broken down into two separate events. The first took place on August 1st, 1951, in what is now Kikuchi City, Kumamoto Prefecture. Somebody tossed a piece of dynamite into the house of a sanitation worker for the local government, where it then exploded. It didn't explode completely, however, and while the worker and his child were home at the time, they suffered from only minor injuries. Now, why would anyone want to toss a stick of dynamite into a sanitation worker's house? According to reports, the sanitation worker supported the segregation of leper patients, a hot topic at the time. A law passed in 1931, 2 decades earlier, that forced all patients with leprosy to be hospitalized in government-designated facilities. One of these facilities, Kikuchi Keifuen Sanatorium, was located close to the sanitation worker's house. The disease was both contagious and incurable at the time, so this was the way the government decided to deal with it. By the early 1950s, however, people were arguing that this was inhumane and changes should be made to the law. Segregation was not the answer, and it removed people's human rights. As such, this local sanitation officer from Kumamoto, who supported the continued segregation of patients, was individually targeted. It didn't take police long to narrow down a suspect, Fujimoto Matsuo, a 29-year-old from the village who had been diagnosed with leprosy. They believed Fujimoto to be behind all this because the sanitation employee had recently recommended that Fujimoto be hospitalized at Kikuchi Keifuen Sanatorium because of his condition. Police claimed that Fujimoto developed a grudge against the worker because of this and thus decided to kill him. Why he chose dynamite to do so remained unknown, but either way, Fujimoto was arrested and taken into custody, despite the fact police were unable to determine any way Fujimoto may have been able to acquire the explosive. Fujimoto was held in an outer cell in Kumamoto prison while he awaited trial, and although nobody ever uncovered any evidence of where or how he may have gotten the dynamite, Fujimoto was found guilty on June 9, 1952, and sentenced to 10 years prison for attempted murder and violating the explosives control law. Fujimoto immediately appealed, but then, on June 16th, only a week later, he escaped detention and went on the run. This led to the second part of what later came to be called the Fujimoto incident. At roughly 7 a.m. on July 7th, 3 weeks after Fujimoto's escape, the sanitation worker was found dead in the mountains. An elementary school student on their way to school found the body by the side of a path, and he had been stabbed over 20 times. Naturally, the police suspected that this was Fujimoto's work. He had been in custody ever since the explosion, had just been found guilty of attempting to kill the sanitation worker, and now, only a few weeks after escaping, the man was found dead. How could it be anyone else? The police set out on a large manhunt, and on July 13th, 6 days later, they found Fujimoto hiding in the mountains. He resisted arrest, and police fired 4 gunshots, one of them hitting his right forearm as he attempted to flee through a field. They were able to capture the man and bring him back for new charges, this time escaping custody and murder. Fujimoto maintained his innocence, however, and the evidence against him was flimsy. It was true that he had a reason to want the worker dead, yes, but simply having a reason isn't enough to convict someone. There were several key pieces of evidence, or lack thereof, that cast doubt on Fujimoto actually being the murderer. For one, the weapon the sanitation worker was stabbed with was unclear. It was at different times thought to have been a sickle, a sashimi knife, or a short sword. Fujimoto had none of these, and although a dagger was found roughly 10 minutes away on foot from the sanitation worker's body, there was no blood on it. Second, there was none of the victim's blood on Fujimoto's jacket. Considering that the victim was stabbed over 20 times, that certainly seems more than a little odd. Several thefts were also committed during the time Fujimoto was on the run and blamed on him, with people thinking him an easy scapegoat, being an escaped prisoner and all, meaning that people were already actively attempting to frame him for different crimes. It was also reported that numerous people in the village held a grudge against the sanitation worker, and perhaps someone took advantage of Fujimoto being on the run to frame him for the murder. And finally, while they did find a little blood on a towel in Fujimoto's possession, it was blood type A. This matched the victim's blood, yes, but also Fujimoto himself. He was suffering from leprosy and on the run in the mountains. It wasn't exactly a stretch of the imagination to think that, at some point, he would have needed to wipe some of his own blood off with the towel. Despite all of this, on August 29th, 1953, the Kumamoto District Court sentenced Fujimoto to death. He appealed, and it wasn't long until outside sources took notice of the case as well. In the same year, the national government passed the 1953 Leprosy Prevention Law, once again bringing the issue to the forefront of people's minds. Little was changed from the 1931 law, however, and patients with leprosy were still forced to be hospitalized against their will. More and more people found this inhumane, and when news broke of Fujimoto's case, and the lack of evidence against him, the Society to Save Fujimoto Matsuo was born. One of these members was Nakasone Yasuhiro, who would later go on to serve as Prime Minister of Japan. As Fujimoto continued to appeal to the courts, this group worked on the outside to highlight his case and even request a retrial. Several other issues were also raised with regards to Fujimoto being a leprosy patient and how both the police and the courts treated him. For instance, he was shot by the police shortly before they brought him back into custody, but he was then subsequently interrogated without receiving proper medical treatment because of fear towards his leprosy. His trial was also held in a special courtroom set up in the sanitarium, with judges wearing white sanitation clothes, rubber gloves and boots, and handling papers with tongs for fear of infection. After numerous appeals, Fujimoto's death sentence was confirmed by the Supreme Court on August 23, 1957. Several retrials were requested after this, but they were all rejected, and on September 14, 1962, Fujimoto's sentence was carried out at Fukuoka prison. He was 40 years old. Citizens continued to fight in Fujimoto's name long after his death, and finally, on February 2nd, 2020, almost 60 years after his death, the Kumamoto District Court ruled that Fujimoto's trial was unconstitutional and his rights had been violated. He had indeed been discriminated against for being a leprosy patient. No compensation was ever paid, however, because nobody involved in the case was actually related to Fujimoto, and only family members could receive compensation. The government did not appeal, and the decision was made final. Officially, the sanitation worker was murdered by Fujimoto and he was sentenced to death over it. But years of fighting to clear his name finally put real doubt over whether he truly was the perpetrator or not, and at the very least, the government admitted that his rights had been violated and his trial was unconstitutional. Whether it truly was Fujimoto that murdered the worker, or someone trying to frame him, or somebody else with their own grudge against the man will perhaps forever remain unknown. But what did you guys think of this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.